Hi, good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. It was on such short notice, but Beli Neder, Bezras Hashem, we'll attempt to do this regularly, week in, week out. Um, Beli Neder. This time, 10:15. Everyone log on, but not until you have your bowl of cholent and your beer and your l'chaim. Do Mishmar like it's supposed to be done. Um, so I guess, and by the way, feel free, to use the chat to ask questions. We're going to do this as if we're all sitting together in the same room, not just virtually, but really. I'll take questions and I'll respond to comments. So go ahead, take full advantage. Your comments come up on the screen. I just want to, lest I forget. Please subscribe to the channel. Because aside from this great forum, we do Parshas HaShavua, Al Derech HaMachshava, and say fundamental ideas. And this may not necessarily be at the same time every week, so you have to get notifications when we're going live. But also this channel, Baruch Hashem, we offer a lot of things. We're doing Daf Yomi, but we're doing it in the Rif, because that way you could really get exactly what you're meant to take away from the Daf Gemara, and it really takes less than 40 minutes, not without cutting any corners. And so it's like a whole Daf in 40 minutes, fully explained with everything you were meant to take away. Again, not to discourage anyone from doing the Daf, the whole Daf. But we do Daf Yomi with the Rif. We do Aruch HaShulchan. We do the material for Smichas Chaver Hilchot Shabbos. We also do the material for Yara Yara. Basar B'chov and Ta'aruvas on Aruch HaShulchan, all well explained. We started doing Derech Hashem, from the beginning. We started doing Kuzari. We started doing Moreh Nevuchim. All this great stuff and more. We do like 2 or 3 new videos and presentations daily. So we get through all this stuff and more on weekly rotations, with the exception of things that we do literally daily, like the Daf and Rif. So really subscribe to this channel so you can take full advantage of it. Of course, if you missed the presentation while it's being offered live, you didn't really miss it, because it gets permanently stored on the channel. But at least if you're subscribed, you'll have notification that there's another installment of a series that was given, so you'll know they have to go either catch it live, or you'll know it's out there for you to catch up. So you shouldn't get lost in the continuity, as later shiurim are based on earlier ones. Okay, so please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. Do yourselves a favor, hit the subscribe button. And there's also, check out our website. I'd put it on the screen. evanshia.com. This website has a wealth of material in it, videos, audios, Parsha sheets, 2 years worth of Parsha sheets. And I will endeavor to say something new tonight that I haven't said on any of the things that are, out there. There might be some overlaps. There might be, but I try always to say something new. And then tonight is no exception. So going to the website doesn't mean that you don't need, would not make what we're doing here on this channel superfluous. Okay. So without further ado, I think the biggest question that should bother every thinking person, that we know that the sin of having sold Yosef is something that we're atoning for across the generations. Sadly, as is alluded to in this week's parsha, Yosef and Binyamin cried at each other's necks, crying over the Batei Mikdashos. And we know that the reason why the Batei Mikdashos ultimately were destroyed is because we didn't fully fix the sin of selling Yosef. That's why at this time, when they're trying to pull the pieces together, they know that the tikkun is not complete. It is especially accentuated, right, by the Churban Bayesheni, right? But it was a problem throughout all the Churbanos. But it's especially by Churban Bayesheni because of sinas chinam, hatred between brothers, which means that the hatred between Yotzra wasn't fully fixed, and it was really, that bad midah, caused hatred amongst ourselves, even over 1,000 years later, 1,500 years later. So we know that sin is still there. That's also by Chanukah. We just read Hanukkah, right? So by the laying of Hanukkah, we read what they brought for the Chanukah Samishkar, and it was Sir Izim Lechatas. One of the things that the Siyam brought amongst their other offerings was the Sir Izim Lechatas, right, to be Machaper on Chet Machiras Yosef. Again, bringing out the point that that's a stain that still needs to be erased, and that was the cause. So even at the time of inaugurating the Mishkan, they had to do something to try to mitigate that sin, try to cleanse it as to whatever extent possible. But we know it wasn't fully cleansed because the Mishkan got destroyed. The Mishkan Shiloh, which they cried about this week's parsha, the base of Mikdash got destroyed. And even post the Churban Abayis, there was, we know the Asar Ruge Malchus, some of them who lived after Churban Abayis, were also, because of the Chet of Mechiras Yosef. So, so the thing to understand is very simply, why was it not fixed? Already in this week's parsha, when they hugged each other, they got together. Now, it must have been worth something in the sense that, they did get together, they were reunited. Yaakov Avinu's Ruach HaKodesh was restored. As it were, all the pieces of the puzzle were put into place. And this is, like I said, it's most brought out by the fact that Yaakov Avinu's prophecy was fully restored. He was impaired as the father of, the father that encompasses the whole Jewish people. He was impaired with Yosef missing, and now he's restored, referring to the restoration of the Jewish spirit. Besod, the secret of what the Gemara says in Tanis, Yaakov Avinu lo meis, ma zaro b'chaim afuim, because just like we're alive, that means he's alive. He is the spirit of the Jewish people. So his spirit was restored, right? So there was a tikkun, they did get real. So why is that? In what way was there? We have to analyze it from both sides. In what way was there a tikkun, and in what way is the tikkun still incomplete? So that's what we want to explore tonight. So now, there's something else which I may have spoken about in previous years. I don't think I spoke about it any time recently, but I could be wrong. But I I don't think I mentioned this any time recently. That it's a question that I often get. I remember when I was teaching at Esha Torah, and they taught the guys the Gemara in Brachas. That says Hakol Echachar Pisron. You know what decides a dream. What seals it is the way you interpret it. And really Hakol Echachar Pisron, and really the interpretation ascribed to a dream will really influence what happens. Because I guess I would venture to say, without getting psychological and self-fulfilling prophecy, to keep it more metaphysical, I'd say like this: that if a dream could represent multiple possibilities, and the one that goes active, right, is the possibility that is a the interpretation that's described dream makes that possibility go active, whereas the other possibilities that the dream could allude to remain theoretical. That's, I guess, the way to explain it. Without getting psychological, that as it were, you're making it happen to yourself by self-fulfilling prophecy, or because you expect it. I think we could leave it somewhat metaphysical and say it like that a dream probably has multiple possibilities, It's like the quantum field. It's like the quantum field, electron distribution, and when you take the measurement, that's what sets it. So, so the interpretation because of that explanation, that interpretation goes active and the rest are shut out. Like measuring the quantum, measuring the electron where it is shuts out all the other real possibilities of where it was. Also, however, the quantum physics explains it, right? So, with that in mind, I used to always get this question, like, so why did Yosef kill the Sarah Ophim, the baker, Paro's baker? He's in the slammer, and he sees his ticket to get out. Why do you just should have interpreted, the baker's dream positively also? What do you have against the baker? Unless there was something else, unless it was not a dream with multiple possibilities. He knew the baker was a dead man, right? And you have to understand why. Yeah, it would seem that they had their dreams as a message to him, right? And he got the message that was being expressed. And the question, what was the message? What exactly is the difference between the baker and the Saramashkim, the king's bartender, as it were? Seemingly they're both guilty of parallel, injustices. One had the rock, the little pebble in the baked in the cake. He didn't sift its flour properly. The other guy had a fly that flew into the wine. Yeah, seemingly very parallel. So why should one be killed and the other one you know, be pardoned? You Yosef must have felt that that they were talking to him. God gave them these dreams for him to hear, and it was a message to him, and that's why it wasn't really open to interpretation, at least from where Yosef was standing. He felt that they were vehicle of Hashem to give him a message, and this is the message he took from it. And that's why there was not the possibility for him to interpret any other way because he was being given a message. And we have to say what that message is. Um, so now, let's lay out more pieces to the puzzle. In the whole lead up to this week's parsha, we were with Hanukkah. Right? This, from things that I've said, things from what I've published in my Evan Shasia Parsha sheets. But it's none of it is my is my chiddush. I took it all from Svarim, ancient, or right from the Shla Kodesh, and let alone in the Hasidic works. We know Parshas Vayeshev Miketz, which are generally the Parshas of Shabbos Hanukkah, meaning in most instances, if not all, if there are two Shabbosos, Hanukkah, it's Vayeshev Miketz. And if there's only one Shabbos Hanukkah, it's Miketz, right? And Vayeshev has, it will always be the Shabbos before Hanukkah if there's only one Shabbos Hanukkah. Right? And there are very clear allusions in Vayeshev to Hanukkah. And, like I said, these things are well known. And I'm sure you guys coming fresh out of Hanukkah still remember all the drushes that you heard from your rabbis or your kids said over, from the Rebbe in Yeshiva, or that you saw in the Hasidic Sforim. I don't even need to, recap any of them. Why Miketz is Mamish Hanukkah, and and Vayeshev is also Mamish Hanukkah, as if it's not Shabbos Hanukkah itself, but it's always the Shabbos before Hanukkah, and we know the Shabbos before an event always alludes to the events coming up in that week. So Vayigash, in my memory, is always after Hanukkah, right? Right, and we get into Purim. Interesting, right? The very next holiday on our calendar, real holiday. Tu B'Shvat is not a holiday per se. We'll talk about Tu B'Shvat when Tu B'Shvat comes around. All right, but the real next Chag, the Rabbanon, is Purim. Hanukkah and Purim, and it's interesting. There are plenty of allusions to Hanukkah in Vayeshev Miketz, and those parshas, the hero of those parshas, is Yosef. Right? The whole parshas Miketz, it's all Yosef, all Yosef. Getting out of the slammer and becoming the second in command of Egypt, and how he's manipulating the brothers. Tonight we'll get a little bit deeper into what was going on over there. He's the hero of it, and in Vayeshev also, he's pretty much the hero in a sense that first he's the one in distress. He's the protagonist, right? But he goes quickly from being a protagonist to being the hero of triumph, and he's in charge of the house of Potiphar. And even if he had a setback, in his career by being framed by Ashes Potiphar, but in our literature, from our perspective, that was his moment of glory, right? He was Omed ben Nisayon, right? So Vayeshev and Miketz is all Yosef's parshas as being the good guy, the successful guy, right? There's another person that turns up in Vayeshev, but he's viewed as a were, seemingly, and we're going to qualify that, but seemingly on a superficial level before we get deeper, and seemingly on a superficial level, and we're going to explain this how it's not that way. But on a superficial level, Yehuda also turns up as the bad guy. He's the antagonist, right? He's the one who says to sell Yosef, and then for some reason, it's mainly Yosef's story, but we shtup in the middle of Yosef's story between his having been sold and between his his trials and tribulations and triumphs in Egypt. We shtup in the middle, right? Go on a tangent and talk about Yehuda and seemingly his failure, right? That his sons, were 2 out of 3 were not righteous, and then were died young because of their sin. And Yehuda simply made a terrible error and inadvertently had relations with his daughter-in-law, which again, before the giving of the Torah was permitted, but was not respectable. He wasn't planning on doing it. So so Yehuda is by no means the hero in Vayeshev, but it's interesting to take note of the story that happened there. In this week's parsha, he's the hero. Yehuda's the hero, right? There's Yehuda makes a comeback, as the one that's willing to put his life on the line, do anything to save Binyamin, anything to liberate Binyamin, whether it's put his life on the line, whether it's to even destroy Egypt if necessary, as the Medrash says. Yehuda's the hero. And we allude to Purim, right? Yosef, after he reveals himself and seemingly reconciles, like we said before, we have to discuss in what way was the reconciliation, in what way is the reconciliation incomplete, right? So but Yosef acknowledges the miracle of Purim. He says, Binyamin, who seemingly was liberated by Yehuda, but not liberated in the sense that, and therefore Yosef has no connection to Binyamin, right? But rather, Yehuda wrests Binyamin away from Yosef. Yosef, gives in, but but that way he rejoins the Jewish people, and he gives Binyamin 5 changes of clothing to allude to Mordechai. Mordechai Yehudi is a descendant way down the line who's going to leave, the king Ahasuerus after the big miracle of Purim, wearing 5 sets of glorious clothing. So what's the connection? When Yosef is the hero, it's Hanukkah. When Yehuda seemingly is the hero, and Yosef just, he melts. He just can't keep up the roots in the face of the brotherhood that Yehuda is willing to display for Binyamin, even at the point of self-sacrifice. So where Yehuda is the hero, that's when Yosef reveals himself. And that's where also Yosef alludes to the story of Purim. Right? And now there's an interesting thing. Purim is, Mordechai, who was from the tribe of Binyamin, identified throughout the Megillah as Mordechai ha-Yehudi, the Judite, right? And the Jews throughout the Megillah are called Yehudim, from the tribe of Judah. Right? Interesting. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. He was Ish Yemini, but he identified as a Yehudi, emphasizing, stressing the special bond that there is between Binyamin and Yehuda, right? Forged at that moment that Yehuda was willing to, put himself on the line for Binyamin, right? Trade himself for anything to get Binyamin back. Right? So this fits with the idea when we, where Yehuda is he is the hero, right? So there's an allusion to Purim. But of course, it's Yehuda, it's Yosef bringing out that illusion, and that's of significance also. Okay, now I will recap some things that I know I said in previous years, and I know that will appear in the Parsha sheet. Um, because what I'm going to say is new, but it's extending ideas. All new ideas are based on certain, ever-present axioms. No new idea comes out of nowhere and is based on nothing because that's called a baseless idea, right? So I just want to recap briefly some principles that you people may know, and then I'm going to add to it, what I think, is special things I came up with just this evening, Baruch Hashem. As is well known, Yosef and Yehuda, represent two very different modes of conduct, and every Jew is a little bit of each, but they're two very different ways of I call it of serving Hashem, but that's not accurate. It's not accurate. It's not. It's it's more about, and listen to this carefully, right? It's more about how to serve Hashem versus just you a state of being God's chosen and letting Him use you as a pawn. Right? There's like how we serve Him when we want to do something for Him, and of course, in doing, there's a sense of self achievement. A sense of self. I did it. I give you this. If it's serving someone else, this is what I give you, and you kind of have the right to ask for something in return. Right? So there's definitely a sense of self. Either whether even in the service itself, a sense of satisfaction. The joy of accomplishment, and certainly so. Even if you're serving someone else, right? The sense of self is now give me something in return. There's a sense of self uh, in work done, job well done, right? And but then there's a sense of being like, I'm just a pawn of divine providence, and everything that happens, God is doing it, and my job is to, you know, sit back, have faith in Hashem, and let Him take control. Right, the opposite of service almost, since that service is I can do, right? And versus this is like, I'm nothing, right? And God owes me nothing. And if I need something from God, what am I going to do? I'm going to pray for it. There's nothing I can do to be worthy of it. So I'll just ask Him. And even the best way to ask is may otsar matnas him. God just give it to me for free. I can't be worthy to earn it anyway. No one is really worth anything, to the point that you would owe them anything. Right? So there's avoda and then there's tefillah. That even though tefillah is called avoda, it's because Hashem wants us to die. But when davening, it's not like, okay, I demand this, I demand that, and you owe me because I'm asking for you. Oh, that's kind of a contradiction to asking. Asking is please, you don't owe me anything. It's called avoda because God wants it, but it's avoda shebelev, right? It's in the heart. It's called to serve God with your heart, and as opposed to the lips. It's called la'avdo b'chol v'achos. So even when it's called service, right? It's called service not because now God owes you for these nice words that you said. You paid him as a compliment. Now he has to honor it. What it should believe, right? It's called divine service because, as it were, you have to give your heart over. Which includes self annulment. Baruch Hashem, you don't owe me anything. Please, anyway, even though you don't owe me anything, please give me. Right? The tefillah comes from the same root as emuna and bitachon, right? Faith and just trusting Hashem, and that's why all the laws of tefillah, right? It was just started brachas in Daf Yomi. Laws of tefillah are together with the laws of Kriyat Shema, which is to accept God's majesty as He is the one and only power, and it all goes together. Which orders Royim, right? The laws of giving, mitzvah parts, where your mamin, it's called, and that whole order, it's called emuna. Vaya emuna sitecha. It's called emuna. Shemamin b'chelam zorea. You plant, with faith in Hashem, that He's going to return, give you back tenfold when you plant. You have, if you don't have faith in God, you wouldn't be giving all the trumas and maestras that Seder's Rhyme demands that you give, because you trust Him. He'll take care of me. So if He tells me to give away truma to the Kohen and maestr to the Levi and maestr only, and on Shemitah just to not work at all, I trust Him. Right? So it all comes together. So tefillah is over there with Kriya Shema and all the mitzvahs, hatfilus parts, which are all about emunah. So tefillah has to be about emunah also. Right? It's based on the faith that Hashem is the one and only and doesn't need anything, and can give you whatever you want, and just the opposite, because He doesn't need anything. That's why He could give you something just for the asking, because He doesn't need anything anyway. So no matter how much you give Him, He still doesn't owe you anything because He doesn't need anything. Right? So it all goes here. It's active, and that's why it's called service of the heart. Right? The reason why it's a service is that you're filling your heart with faith, and that's the service. That's the aspect of divine service. It's not because He owes you for the nice words that you said. Okay? And there's a time when we have to do whatever we can do, and there's a tremendous sense of satisfaction and kiddush Hashem when we're successful. It's interesting, right? Right, if we're successful and the goyim see that we're successful, whoa, these are God's people, right? We sanctify God's name in the world. That's when we're successful. When we work, when we succeed, and we accomplish. So we take pride in a job well done. God rewards us as if He needed it, not that He does, but as if He, by His own will, He will He will give us mida connected mida, even more. He'll give us olam haba for what we do right, even though He didn't need it. So treat it as if a quid pro quo, in a good way, not in a Biden way, in a good way, right? But more than that, it's a kiddush Hashem when we do good. It sanctifies God in the world. Right? So there's but the other way, what it's to do, there's nothing to do but pray. Nothing to do but pray. That's the time for faith. When you're in that type of situation, when there's nothing to do but pray, yeah, that's where there's nothing to do. You have to have a lot of faith that things will work out, and pray with that faith that God is the faith that He is the master of the universe and He could do anything, and He doesn't need anything, and therefore He could do anything even if you don't deserve it. Right? And in those situations, you have to be accepting that if you don't get what you were hoping for, still, you have to draw straight the fact that since I'm a member of the chosen people, God surely used me as a pawn to fulfill his will. That's the privilege of being a Jewish. I'm Segula, the chosen nation. God uses us to be the vehicle of his will for the world. So I have to have faith in that, if I lost out, I didn't get what I expected or what I hoped for, it's not a loss, because God still used me and used the circumstances that he put me in to execute his will. And that's the highest honor. Highest honor is just to serve him and be a pawn of his will. Now in these two different modes of conduct, the Baal Tshuva. The Baal Tshuva is more of the bitachon type. He has to have a faith that that he as much as he may have chosen to do wrong, but he has to have faith that he can't hurt God. And since he can't hurt God, and he can't derail God's plan for destiny, he has to have faith that the sin that he did is not irreparable. Right? And he has to have faith that God is invincible. So he didn't hurt God, so God won't be or hold a grudge because God is invincible. You can't even get him angry, bad. And that's what Chazal mean. I feel the Vakum Shabbat Chud Omdim. I feel the word of Emekhoim Lamot. The Baal Tshuva stands in a higher place. So there's many interpretations to it, many. But one of them is that the Baal Tshuva really is, he is more, he has to have more faith than the tzaddik that does no wrong. The tzaddik that does no wrong, draws strength and confidence from his success. Right? The Baal Tshuva, who's just faced with failure, his failure, so he has to have strength and confidence, bitachon, that Hashem loves him just for him, right? And that anything he did wrong is fixable, right? And Hashem is invincible and cannot hold any grudge, and will not hold any grudge. It's part of the faith that the Baal Tshuva has to have. The Rambam writes that the reason why the Ram writes in the Morning Book, the reason why I put Hilchot Tshuva in Sefer Hamada. Sefer Hamada talks about the fundamentals of Judaism, fundamental faith. Like Hilchos Yesodei Torah, right? For example, and it talks everything about intellect, Hilchos Talmud Torah. It talks about what you shouldn't believe, like Avodah Zarah. And as an extension of the proper way to think, the way to behave, as an extension of having correct thoughts, it's good meters. A good mind produces a good character. Right? The two go together. That's how Marashiva is explained that that's why the Rambam opens up Sefer Hamada, with the words, the pasuk. Give your kindness to those who know you. Your righteousness to those of straight heart. And it says, is the principles of faith we must believe in, right? That we must accept. And Israel is Hilchos Deis. And the two go together. Hilchos Deis sets the tone for whole Sefer Hamada. The proper beliefs lead to good midas. Right? And part of that is Hilchos Talmud Torah, what you should learn. And Hilchos Avodah Zarah, what you shouldn't believe in. And then comes Hilchos Tshuva. And the Rambam says, Tshuva is something you have to believe in. To believe in Tshuva. All right, he says it mamish belongs to the category of mitzvahs of faith. A person has to believe in Tshuva, which is hard to do if you failed. No, you have to believe in Tshuva. Right? That Tshuva could bail you out, because if you don't believe in Tshuva, you won't do Tshuva. You'll just give up. So that's why he put with that he explained, in a backhanded way why it wasn't Sefer Amada, because he writes in Marnevuchim, he would say you gotta believe it, right? It, it's faith in the face of personal failure, right? As opposed to a tzaddik that could draw strength and confidence from his success, right? And he has no problem believing that Hashem will always be there for him because he's there for Hashem. He does, he accomplishes, right? And in our lives, there are times we're in this phase, time we're in that phase, and this really has its roots in Yehuda and Yosef. Right? Yeah, Yehuda is, seemingly is always failing, right? But not really. His failures come out to be a pawn of God's game. Yeah, so he on a personal level fails, but the amazing thing is that through his failures, God brings about great things. Right. So let's talk about the most obvious and most well known, and this will be the secret of why the Torah interjects this story of Yehuda's extended life. A story that spans years. It's just the Torah interrupts the narrative, right? Storyline of how Yosef was sold and how Yosef goes to Mitzrayim. With a detour, the life of Yehuda that would span many years. He got married, and he had 3 kids, and they grew up, and then this one died, that one died, and he ended up living with his daughter. Right? And, so we're going to yet discuss why this is like forcibly inserted in the middle of the story of Yosef. No? But let's just look at the story of Yehuda per se, onto its own. Right? Was it really a failure? He felt bad about it. He was embarrassed about it. And so much so that Tamar was willing to be burnt alive to spare him the embarrassment. Not bad, right? So, but what happened yet? Well, first of all, it did. It was clarified that she was not a harlot. She was with her father-in-law, which before the giving of the Torah was permitted, and was even fell within the purview of the spirit, not the halacha, not the halacha as we know it, but the spirit of yibum. She should have stayed in the family, and being with the father-in-law would have also been good. Didn't have to necessarily marry one of the brothers. Like I said, this is before the giving of the Torah, when a father-in-law could marry a former daughter-in-law. This is all before the giving of the Torah, and yeah. So and it was in the spirit of Yibum as was practiced in those days. So and that's what it says. Yehuda says when Tamar shows him the stuff that he sent her, ostensibly as payment for services rendered, right? But it was really also he said tzadka mimeni. She's correct more than me. But then Rashi brings a chazal tzadka. She's right. Then mimeni. God says mimeni from me. I engineered the whole thing. Right? So now Yehuda, of course, had to be he fessed up to what he did wrong. He repented, right? And he also admitted right then and there to the people, don't kill her, it's from me, right? But then God says, it was really from me. You were a pawn in my game. So now on a personal level, you failed. But on the other hand, you merited to see how you're a pawn in my game. Why? Because Yehuda really did not want to fail. He wanted to do it, right? So when a person sincerely, a Jew, I don't know if this is true let's say this. Let's say it like this is like this. When a Jew sincerely only wants to do what Hashem is right, but that's all he really wants deep down in the heart. Avodah Shabbalet, deep down in the heart, he just wants to do what Hashem wants. So he merits to see that even his failures are part of the divine plan. Now, of course, everything that happens is by divine plan. Even the bad deeds of the Goyim are by divine plan, because there's no such thing as going against divine plan. But the Goyim will never merit to see how they were pawns in God's game, positive senses. If God chose you to be the vehicle of His will, they will never see it because they're not chosen. So, of course, everything performs God's will. The Jews have the privilege of being pawns in the game, chosen to be, as were, God's people, the bull that God plays with. And that's why any Jew that sincerely only wants to do what Hashem wants, he will merit to see, if he does tshuva, and his doing tshuva shows, it shows in retrospect that deep down he always only wanted to do what Hashem wanted. Right? God, we really want to do what you want. Just the Yitzhak gets in the way. So doing tshuva, when he gets his wits about him, he also clarifies retroactively that all he ever wants to do is what Hashem wants. A person does the tshuva to bring out that clarification vis-a-vis what he really wants deep down. He merits to see how he was. Hashem engineered this, right? But you only merit to see it if you do tshuva. And the tshuva has to be sincere, right? A person cannot say, I'll do it sin and then I'll repent. No. If you do it in a premeditated way, so God says, you know what, I'm not even going to let you do tshuva. Right? Yeah, you'll be hit by a bus, before you have a chance, right? You'll get, stone drunk and then you'll drive off. Hashem will work it out that you won't even get a chance to do tshuva. Right? You can't play games. This thing about being a pawn of the divine providence has to be sincere. No one's allowed to use that idea for selfish purposes. Because the selfish purpose in itself shows you have your own self-interest in heart and not just, I want to just do whatever the will of God is. Right? So doing it in a premeditated way obviously shows you had your egocentricity in your heart. Right? So it has to be totally, inadvertent. You always want to do what God wants, and the sin was totally inadvertent. Even the inadvertent also means that your passions just took over your brain and you had no choice, right? But that's what it is. But if you did it consciously, coolly, and calculated, no. Your repentance is nothing. Ain must speak be and just to prove that your repentance is nothing. So it shouldn't So your repentance shouldn't be, shouldn't discourage other penitents. Hashem won't let you do tshuva, so as not to give tshuva a bad name, right? But you said you don't deserve to do tshuva, right? Because you did this in a premeditated way, coolly and calculated. You weren't overcome by passion that you couldn't control. You didn't make a mistake, honest mistake. Yeah, you did. It was okay, but that's not Yehuda. Yehuda doesn't want to make honest mistakes. He doesn't want to make mistakes. He honestly doesn't want to make mistakes. He tries his best to avoid mistakes, right? But his passion got the better of him in that case. Right? So it got clarified. He's a pawn in Hashem's game, and he himself also did tshuva. And the same thing, it is, something parallel happened by his great illustrious descendant. Just like with this union of Yud and Tamar came the Davidic line, Mashiach ben David came out of this, right? Mashiach ben David came out of this. So the whole situation kind of repeated itself with that illustrious descendant that came from that union down the line, David Amlach with Bathsheba, right? God put him to test. The test was too much to bear, but but what is it comes out? But what got clarified? David Melch does sincere tshuva, and it gets clarified that even the sin wasn't really adultery, because Bathsheba had a get. It was a conditional get. Now, of course, David ran the risk that the get would be invalidated if she would get back together with Uriah, but she didn't. It's true he ran that risk, but it's not what happened. It's not what happened. So even the adultery wasn't really adultery. Right? And that got clarified through the sincere repentance that he did. And now that it came out that from Bathsheba comes the line of Mashiach. The line of Mashiach. It has to be a descendant of Shlomo, the Rambam Paskins. Rambam, at least I know he says this, in the Pirush HaMishnayos, right? I can't remember if he says it in the Yad, but yeah, I doubt that he doesn't. Sorry, he doesn't say otherwise in the Yad, to the best of my memory. But in the Mishnayos, he clearly says, as Mashiach has to be a descendant of David and Shlomo. Right? The line of Mashiach came from there. So, and it became clarified that David Melech was a pawn of the providence, but it becomes clarified when the tshuva is sincere. And of course, the sin wasn't done in a cold, calculated way in the first place, because that negates tshuva. Right? Because that's it to be, and so everything turns out for the good. Right? It turns out for the good. That's not Yosef's way, right? Yosef's way is to just do and succeed, and his success, is like all success, it earns him admirers and earns him jealousy. Yeah, if there's such thing as earning jealousy. I want to greet the guy who just came into the room. Please, you can identify yourself on the chat and feel free to ask questions. All right, Yosef's way is to go out and succeed and succeed and succeed, and to do as the best he can, and he gets credit for it, right? And he gets jealousy for it, credit and jealousy. That's the way it works for the successful, right? But here's and of course, everything he does, Hashem, endorses with success. He does the best he can, and Hashem, crowns his efforts with success. Right? Right? He doesn't succumb. Like with the wife Potiphar tries to do something, he doesn't give in. Right? There's something interesting about Yosef. He's always in second place, and that probably drove him crazy until this week's parsha, like we're about to explain. Right? Initially with the brothers, they thought that his success and the dreams that he said means he's going to be the leader. They didn't want him as the leader. And subsequently, when they cast him out, even though he's successful wherever he turns, he's never the leader. In the house of Potiphar, he says to Potiphar, he's no bigger than me in this house, but what can I do? He's the master, and you're his wife and not my wife. That's it. He has to accept that Potiphar is, even though he does everything, Yosef does everything, Potiphar is still the master of the household and her husband, and not him, right? Right now, over there, on moral grounds, he had to look at it that way. But there come times which was much greater test. Must be much more grating on his nerves when there is no moral grounds, like i.e. in the slammer. He runs the jail. He instantly becomes the real warden, right? But he's still not Sar Beit HaSohar. He's still not the warden. He's still not in head of the jail. And that probably drove him crazy. See, by Potiphar, he had a moral obligation to say, look, he's the man of the house, and this is his wife, and that's it. I can't steal and I can't commit adultery. But here's the thing, now he's in jail and he's doing all the work. He doesn't get the credit. Right? Nerve-wracking, I'm sure. How would you feel? Right? But nonetheless, he sanctifies God's name. Everyone sees his success and attributes it, his God, so his success is also, as it were, God's success, glorify God in the world. But he still has to live with it that for some reason he's always in second place. Happens again. Right? In the parsha we just read. So he gets out of the slammer. And Paro says, you are in effect the leader of Egypt. You do everything. The only difference between me and you, I sit on a throne, you don't. But there's another difference. Joseph does all the work. Paro does nothing. Right? Paro's just saying the difference of why he's the king, and Joseph, I got the throne, you don't. All right. There's another difference. Joseph does all the Paro doesn't. if me or you were Yosef, we would just try to think how to assassinate this do-nothing president. Our president, Donald Trump, is the one president that actually really does. All other presidents, other than Donald Trump, follow the power example, right? Do nothing and take all the credit, like Obama and God forbid, whoever the Democrats would elect, but Hashem will protect us from that. Donald Trump is the first president that really does. Promises made, promises kept. Hashem should bless Donald Trump and protect him from his enemies, because his enemies are our enemies, and get him reelected in 2020 with a House and a Senate that's all Republican. Amen. Anyway, but getting back to our point, getting back to our point. Yosef's running Egypt, and Paro gets all the credit. There's a lesson there for Yosef, right? But the truth is, he the kind of got the message in the slammer, which paved the way. Was still another 2 years, because he put too much faith in the bartender. Still took to him, but he knew his redemption was coming when he learned his lesson, and he learned the lesson from those two dreams. Right? So let me preface: Yosef is compared to the ox. He's the work animal, right? And he had the work animal that used to pull the plow. Back in the old days, the ox that was your tractor. That was your plow. That was, that was the engine by which you. And there's a possible. Sure, all the grain is with the power of the ox, and indeed, the bracha Yosef gets from Yaakov and subsequently from Moshe Rabbeinu, the tribe Yosef. His land will be tremendously fertile, produce a lot of produce, produce, literally, produce. Huh? Yehuda is likened to the lion. No one messes with the lion, but that includes no one puts a lion to work. The lion just is a king. He just is. It's not that he earns it. If an ox, deserves any type of appreciation, it's well earned because the ox goes to work. It's a work animal. The lion does not work, right? The lion just is king of the animals, the non-domesticated animals. Sure, right? The ox is the king of the domesticated animals, and it's the kingdom because he works and he earns and he accomplishes. Right? The lion just is. Yehuda just is a pawn of God's will. Right. So now there's two products that kind of reflect this difference: bread and cakes on the one hand, and wine on the other. Right. Bread and cakes is the direct result of hard work. First, plowing, growing the grain, and grinding the grain, sifting the grain, baking it. Right, hard work. Right, and hard work, is it's best when it's fresh, like bread. Leaving it alone, locking it up is not going to improve the cake, right? You have to do what you can and eat it as quickly as you can after you've pulled away from it because there's no more work to be done. That you should just enjoy it as quickly as you can, or just go rotten if you leave it untended, right? Right? It has no future. What you accomplished, enjoy it. If you fresh from the hand to the mouth. But there's nothing to be gained by sitting back and waiting. And it's even by every step of the process, let alone when you're finished. It's your handiwork. If you're finished doing, then eat it right here, right now. There's nothing to be gained by locking it up somewhere as we're leaving it to destiny, leaving it to divine providence. From this point onwards, as soon as you're finished with doing, eat it. Right? Wine is not that way. Right? So even though initially it grows, right, but then after that, after you press it, lock it up, right? Lock it up in a barrel. The longer, the better. Gets better with age. The secrets of the Torah that are destined to be revealed to us are called Yain HaMishmar Ba'anavav, right? The wine that's still hidden within the grapes, hasn't been brought out yet, right? Wine is the hidden, right? The secrets of destiny. That's why I leave the wine, leave it for destiny, because the longer you leave it, the better it gets. Like destiny, we believe the world is, following a divine plan and getting better and better and better gradually. What wine represents. And that's why nichnas, when wine comes, into the body, out comes secrets. Wine is parallel to the secrets. That's why it has that effect on the person. It brings out what's hidden in his heart. Odom nikor bekoso kiso vekaso. 3 ways to see the real person. When he gets angry, so he drops all pretensions because he has presence of mind to control himself. Kiso, if he's stingy or not. You see how, by the way, he spends money. You see what he's really like. And then koso, when he right? You see what a person's really like deep down on the inside. His secret hidden. That comes out when you drink wine. Wine is parallel to the secret in the heart, level of heart, right? Destiny, let the wine just age, right? Meaning we'll drink it later. Like at the end of time, we'll see what life was really all about and what God was thinking and how it was all part of a master plan. And that's Yehuda. That's why Yaakov blesses Yehuda with wine. His land is going to be full of wine. And in next week's Parshas Vayigash, all about wine. Damanovim, right? It's all about, Chachli Yain. Everything is about wine and how his land will be producing wine, right? Wine is about destiny. Wine is about secret. Uh, So Yosef is parallel to grain. Yehuda is parallel to wine. Right? Right? So now let's take a look. There was a baker and a wine, the guy who was in charge of the wine in the slammer. Right? And Yosef understood, right, that the dreams that they had was a message to him. And he has to and what he said to them was really the message that God was trying to put in his head. Right? There is a subtle difference, and it's very subtle, but that subtle difference makes all the difference in the world between what the Sarah Mashkim did wrong, what Sarofim did wrong. What Sarah Mashkim did wrong was the Sarah Mashkim, he didn't catch the fact that a fly flew into the cup. A fly. Think about this: a fly flying into a cup is an act of providence, it's an act of God. It happened on your watch, and that's why you're going to take heat for it. But it's not really your fault. Higher divine providence that pulls the events together, made it happen. The baker failed at his job. He really failed because that little pebble that was baked into the bread and cake, he did not sift the flour properly. He didn't do it. So the baker, his failure is that he didn't do his job, and that's why he pays dearly. The bartender, it happened on his watch, but it's literally something beyond his control happened on his watch. So he takes the heat for it because it happened on his watch, but it's not really his fault. It's not his doing. God did it. God made the fly fall into the cup. He didn't do it. He didn't put the fly in the cup. God made it happen. It happened on his watch, so he takes heat for it, right? But it's not really his fault. It was engineered by a higher power. What the baker did wrong, right, was really negligence on that. You didn't sift the flour properly. And with that, Yosef understood. He got the message. I'm grain. I have a tough job. It's a privilege, but it's a tough job because literally I have a job to do. My job is to do and succeed. I'm like the baker. I'm grain. I have to sift the grain properly, and if I ever do anything, because you have to understand where to Yosef, life is very unfair to Yosef. always in, even when he's successful, always in second place. And to him, it looks like Yehuda gets a free ride. I succeed and I'm thrown the slammer, and Yehuda succumbs and he's honored. From that, comes the whole, majestic line of Malchus based of it. Right? It's just not fair. We have said no. Your roles are different, and your circumstances are different. Yosef, you're like the baker, and therefore, and your job is to succeed, succeed, succeed. And God also puts you in a situation parallel to your strengths. You have abilities, and if you ever fail, it's because you didn't work hard enough. You're like the baker. If you fail, it's because you didn't sift hard enough. And so God lines up and gives you a life pattern perfectly parallel to your strength. And that's your role. Your role is the doer and the succeeder. Right? Yehuda's like the bartender. He's wine, right? So he's a pawn in God's game. And his failures are not really because he's lazy. His failures are, because he's of pure of heart. But his failures are all engineered from above, like God making the fly falling out. Joseph has to learn that lesson. Joseph has to learn that lesson. Yehuda's not getting a free ride. Yehuda's role is different. His strengths are different, and his role is different. And the failures that happened to him literally happened to him. It's not his poor doing. Joseph learns that lesson, and he sends the Saraphin to the gallows, not because he had anything against him, but God was teaching him that lesson. A failure at what you were meant to do, which you were able to do and meant to do, okay, you got to pay full price. A failure that Hashem thrust upon you beyond your control, right? If you sincerely always want to stick with Hashem, He's going to make good out of it. Only good will come out of it, and you'll see how it was just you were just upon Hashem's name. He has to learn, the difference between his strengths and roles versus Yehuda's strength and role. Right? And he learned that lesson, right? And he was ready to, but there's still another step, right? Another step, right? That the aside from accepting the differences, he also has to accept that Yehuda is going to be the real king. At the end of the day, right? Hashem, he wants us to serve. He wants to do whatever we can. We also have to acknowledge that not because he needs it, not because we have to do our job. We must do our job. We must do our job to the fullest extent of our ability. Always, 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 right? But we must never think that God really needs it. Right? At the end of the day, right, Hashem needs nothing. And by the same token, as much as we accomplish by the grace of God, and that is the sanctification of God's name, much as we accomplish, right? Sometimes what we accomplish unconsciously, because we were chosen to be God's pawns, is even greater, because that's what He's doing, what He's engineering. Right? And we have to come, a real servant of Hashem has to acknowledge that. Yes, I'm serving because God told me to serve Him, right? But I can't, chas v'shalom, start thinking that God needs this, right? And that now, therefore, God owes me, right? Right, so that you have to go from the can do to the total annulment, and that's why we have two kings, Mashiach ben Yosef, but the final that's is Mashiach ben David, the total annulment. Because as much as we're going to be shown at the end of time, we'll be richly rewarded for what we did. We'll be richly rewarded, and that's going to be called what we rightfully earned, we rightfully earned. But you know what's going to blow us away even more than what we rightfully earned? We'll have our olam haba we rightfully earned for a job well done. It won't be bread of shame, literally bread of shame. Get it? Yosef, bread. Not be bread of shame. Not be namadek. He's worked hard for it, right? And that's what Yosef is, working hard for that bread, but bread that you work for, right? So that's our olam haba, that's ours, and we have the satisfaction that it's earned, but that's not going to be the most amazing thing that's mind blowing. You know what's going to be the most amazing, mind blowing thing? the stuff that was done through us by Hashem choosing us as the pawn of His game. Right? Those events, the things that we did unconsciously, by divine engineering, which we were chosen to be those pawns. It's our role of Am Segula, right? That's what's going to blow our minds even more. What God accomplished through us, not what we accomplished for God. He needs anything, right? So if A, acknowledge he doesn't really need it, and B, as much as we accomplished what Hashem did through us, Shalomidas, was even greater than what we did midas. That's the Yehuda role. That's the Yehuda role, right? But we can't rely on the Yehuda role, right? And not care about what we do. No. We have to first and foremost do our duty, and that's Yehuda also. Yehuda does his duty. His failures are totally inadvertent, right? We have to first and foremost do our duty. That's the secret of Rachel Akartzabayis. Rachel, the mother of Yosef, is the main wife of Yaakov. And our focus has to be on the can do. The Beis Hamikdash, which is in that portion of Binyamin, it's both a place of prayer and a place of sacrifice. So it's a place of prayer even in this day and age because we have to daven facing there, right? But it's mainly a place to do the sacrifice, to do work, right? To do work and to pray. It's both. And that's the secret that Yosef Yehuda struggle over Binyamin. The Beit HaMikdash, is it a place of prayer? Is it a place of service? Avoda, service is Yosef. Prayer is Yehuda. Ba'ani tefillah, I am prayer. Okay? And it's both. And that's where they find their unity. They find their unity through Binyamin, through fighting over Binyamin. And Binyamin identifies with both. Binyamin is first and foremost Yosef's brother. They have a special embrace, the two of them. But Binyamin also, his descendant is called Mordechai Ha-Yehudi. Binyamin is the one that bridged Yosef and Yehuda again together. Right, it's taking much longer than I thought. But that's the difference between Hanukkah and Purim. Right? So let's jump straight to Purim. Mordechai Yehudi. What's the most enjoyable mitzvah on Purim? All mitzvah, we do all mitzvahs with joy. But I've never met the person who has a problem with doing the mitzvah of getting drunk on Purim. According to the Rambam and many other Rishonim, not all. Many from hold the mitzvah is wine, dafka, Mordechai Yehudi, right? Because in Purim we saw even that everything is v'nafochu. The failures turn into successes, right? Esther, terrible thing, forcibly taken to be as a Gentile king. That whole thing turned the whole thing on its head and saved the Jewish people and caused the reacceptance of the Torah. That's Purim. That's when Yehuda is the in the parsha that Yehuda is the hero in this parsha of Vayigash. He's going to do anything, right, to save Yosef, to save Binyamin from Yosef, thinking that Yosef's the Egyptian, and in this parsha where he's the hero, and that brotherhood melts Yosef, and Yosef reveals himself and puts it all together, right? So that's Yehuda was the main mover, right? So over here is where we talk about Purim. Purim is Binyamin's connection to Yehuda. Mordechai is from Binyamin, Ha-Yehudi. Right? He's the hero of Vayigash. And of course, another that came out of Vayigash is the unification. Vayigash, Yehuda, you can really read Vayigash of Yehuda. Yehuda approached him. Through the act of fighting for Binyamin, he reunited with Yosef. And the Zohar says, this is Pasha, there's the secret of Smicha Skula L'Tfila. Point together that we, in davening, the Geula, talking about our redemption with taking us out of Egypt, should be together with Tefillah. Tefillah is like, Rebbe, you're everything, I'm nothing, and since you're everything, and so me'otzamat naschinam, please give me, right? We come to that after we talk about Geula, we talk about Yitzias Mitzrayim, which as it were, that's brownie points, because first of all, you're reminding Hashem, as it were, the good times for the sake of the good times. Also, we have a certain measure of merit that we followed God into the desert, That's geula. That's can do, but the can do has to be together with total annulment. Right? Like the base of which is binyamin, has to be a place of service, korbanos, and a place of fear. Right? And that's the difference between Hanukkah and Purim. Both have to do with binyamin. Right? But Hanukkah is, more now. Yosef, crowning Binyamin, giving him the 5 there, is an acknowledgement of Purim. That's an acknowledgement of Yehuda's role and how Binyamin will belong to Yehuda, right? But it's more than that. Yosef is speaking Yehuda language. Yosef is speaking Yehuda language. This is my biggest chiddush for tonight. Yosef, he says after he reveals up, don't be afraid. Don't feel bad. It wasn't you. It was God who sent me here. That's Yehuda language. It wasn't you. It was God. And Yosef reiterates it again at the end of Parshas Vayigash. They buried Yaakov and they said, okay, Yosef was only nice to us while our father was still alive. Now that our father's gone, now he's going to take revenge. They come and they beg and they say, we'll be your son. He said, no, Hashem did it. Lachazar, for the sake of sustaining the nation. You get it? Yosef did his part to accept Yehuda and speak Yehuda language and adopt a Yehuda perspective to the point that he was saying about his brothers, hey, you guys, it wasn't you. It was a bigger force manipulating you. He acknowledges Yehuda and the whole Yehuda way, and he speaks Yehuda language. But you know why the unification wasn't complete? Yosef accepted Yehuda, and part of that was acknowledging Purim. Right? But they never did their part to speak Yosef language, because Yosef puts the Yosef way is to put the emphasis on: did you do? Did you not do? Did you make the grade? Did you not make the grade? Did you do what you're supposed to? Did you succeed or not? They failed on a personal level, divine providence aside, and they should have just begged forgiveness, but until he would say, "I'm mochel you, I forgive you." Yosef never said those words. As soon as they heard him speak Yehuda talk, it wasn't you, it was God. It was bigger than you. It was bigger than you. For the good, for the positive outcome that I'm now going to sustain the Jewish people, and here we're going to thrive. Right? It was by divine providence. As soon as they heard him speak Yehuda language, which was what Yosef had to do to get back in to the Jewish people, that was the lesson he had to learn. But they shouldn't have been happy with that. And this Moshe Feinstein says, I had heard the name of Moshe, but I heard it years ago, like 20 years ago, and I didn't appreciate it back then. Now I understand it deep what Moshe, what this statement is, that the whole reason why we're still suffering from Mechiras Yosef until this day is because Yosef never actually said, I forgive you. When a person says, I forgive, so you're making the situation good, between you and him. On a personal level, you're making it good. You're making it level, good between you and him. Right? It's saying I forgive you is the same. It's like it's as if I accepted payment for damages done. I accept the apology. Never said those words. And they should have realized he's talking Yehuda talk, right? But they have to do their part and speak Yosef, and just beg him and beg and say, please forgive us. Stop saying how it's from God, which it is. Tell us that on a human level, from your personal perspective, you forgive us. And forgiving is in halacha. Forgiving is saying, I consider it as if you paid me for all damage done. They never pushed him. They never did Yosef talk. He did Yehuda talk and accepted that the situation was bigger than them. And that's fine, but they still have to make up for their failure on the personal human level. Right? And they should have still worked there until they got him to say, I forgive. That's how the unification was only partial and not complete. The point I want to get back to is that Hanukkah is Yosef, right? It comes up during the parsha where Yosef is the hero, because Hanukkah, we kicked Greek butt. I hope I'm not offending anybody. Right? We went out and we succeeded. We sanctified God's name in the world. Right? Just like Yosef's time, his success also sanctified the name of God, called Shos Hashem Matzech B'Yado. Everyone saw it was he's divinely assisted. And when they asked about it, he said, yeah, God, helps me. That's what happened in Hanukkah. And it ended with a revealed miracle, the Nes Pach Hashemen, the Lord of the burn. It was ultimately the Hashmonaim succeeded, right? They and now I'll tell you something, another amazing chiddush that occurred to me tonight. They just succeeded, they kicked Greek butt, rebuilt the Beis Hamikdash, drove the Egyptians out, and none of that success happened in the story of Purim. We defended ourselves, but we still remained Akati Avida Hashverosh, right? We just turned the situation around, but still outwardly we're still in the Persian exile. Yeah, we kicked butt. We drove the Greeks out, made a whole renaissance, renovate the Beis Hamikdash, and it all got topped off with a revealed miracle. Right? That's the Yosef way. That's the Yosef. That's how Hanukkah is more a Yosef thing. That's Yosef's connection to Binyamin. Yosef, the Nes happened, the Beis Hamikdash. They renovated the Beis Hamikdash. The Egyptians, followed the Beis Hamikdash, drove them out. The Beis Hamikdash in the portion of Binyamin, and the success of the Hashmonaim is the success that is parallel to Yosef, and therefore is an amazing chap. Why did the Levium, the Kohanim, why did they take Yosef's place? Because that's what happened historically. Yosef's power was abused, in a way that Yosef would have been horrified, right? By the sin of the golden calf. Get it? Sure. Right? Ox. Yosef's the animal that's a metaphor for Yosef. They used, and that's what the term avoda zara. It's service, but done not focused and with a foreign focus. Avoda, it's service, which is Yosef's power, but zara. There was idol worship. The koach of avoda was used, but not l'shem shamayim. Right, and how did so one Rashi brings by Vayitzer Bacher, the golden calf was being formed as the gold was melted at the Erev, that someone took out a piece of metal that engraved on it Ale Shor, rise ox. Yosef compared to the ox. Moshe Rabbeinu raised the bones of Yosef that were sunk in the Nile. By doing a mystical rite, by writing on a engraving on a piece of metal, Ale Shor, rise ox. He threw it in, and the coffin of Yosef floated up. Right, because the Egyptians knew that if as long as they have the bones of Yosef with them, the Jewish people can't leave, because Yosef made them swear not to leave without his bones. All right, so they threw it in the Nile. So Moshe used Ale Shor, rise ox, and out came Yosef, who's compared to the ox. Right? So now they got a hold of that piece of metal, Ale Shor, rise ox. They threw it into the molten gold, and out came the ox. Now, of course, that's the misuse of Yosef's power. Yosef is service of God, not service of a foreign power, and not service for self-interest, right? And it's especially so much so that he is totally selfless in his service to the point that he's learned to accept Yehuda as the final king. So, who did not succumb, not only did not succumb to the golden calf, but were the ones to set it right, Shevet Levi, Levium. Right, so Moshe says, Mila Hashem Elai, who's going to come for Hashem? Who's on Hashem's side to me now? And Levi came, and they made a tikkun for how Yosef was misused. So in that way, they inherited Yosef's place, right? Because they avenged how his power was misused and misrepresented. But and by the same token, they were guilty of the same sin Yosef almost was guilty of, and a subsequent descendant of Yosef was guilty of. Yerovam, descendant of Yosef, made golden calves, and because he seceded from the kingdom of Yehuda, and he didn't want Rechavam to be acknowledged as the real king, because if they go to the Beis Hamikdash, Rechavam will be sitting and he'll be standing. So it's interesting. By no coincidence, a descendant of Yosef went bad and made golden calves, and it's all because he didn't want to in any way give. He was afraid that the people would see that his competing king from the house of David is, he's the one who's allowed to sit in the temple, and no one else is allowed to. He was afraid of that. He was afraid that the people say, so, oh, he's the real king, he's not the real king. So he made a golden calf, so parallel. But the Levium at the time, were the avenging the honor of Yosef that was the power of Yosef that was being misused, which indeed happened by a later descendant of Yosef, God, Yerovim, who went bad. And he indeed made golden calves, and it was all about that. There's been a different way to worship and not to go to the base on Mikdash. Okay? So the Levium avenged Joseph, and they're the ones who cleaned up the base on Mikdash all those years later from the Greek occupation and purified it. Right? But they went a step too far. They took the kingdom. But the Rambam counts it as part of the glory, part of the miracle that Chazra Machos Yisrael. That the Rambam does not necessarily disagree with the Ramban that says in next week's parsha that's why the Chashmonaim were killed out, because they should have looked for a descendant of Yehuda to give the kingdom to. But it's not a contradiction. They drove out the Greeks. Yosef is also a king. Right? They were taking the place of Yosef and succeeding, doing and succeeding, which is necessary with dealing with Goyim. Goyim need to see results, undeniable results, to admit and subjugate themselves. But so they actually succumbed to a test that Yosef, himself on a personal level, learned to transcend. He accepted Yehuda. He started talking Yehuda talk. They did the Yosef part, and it's Hanukkah is parallel to Yosef. It's about being successful, overtly successful, right? Revealing God's name in the world overtly, right? Even in this day and age, even before the end of time, right? But their failure was to cross a line that Yosef learned not to cross. That is to accept Yehuda as the final king, right? And they didn't do that. They took the kingdom for themselves. I'm sure the Ramban would agree with the Rambam that it was the right thing to reestablish the kingdom, right? And he would even concede to the Rambam that was the right thing to do initially because there's no one else. And the Rambam would probably concede to the Ramban, right, that what they were obligated after the kingdom stabilized to pass it on, and that was their sin. All right, these are our reflections I want to share. Subscribe to the channel. Hey, I want to say something. I know this took a long time for anyone who's still listening, or anyone who's listening, catching this recording now afterwards. Right. But if there would have been group participation, if you have participated in chat, that would have streamlined it. If you're just going to let me monologue, one thought chases another, if there's actually interaction, that can actually shorten the discourse because it'll keep it focused, focused to, questions that are coming and concerns that you have, so the length of it should not be discouraging anyone. If anything, if you try to catch it live and you participate, it actually will keep it more focused, and probably the presentation will go for a shorter time. Everyone have a good Shabbos. Please subscribe to the channel, and also check out the website, evanshasiya.com. So I already put it on the screen, evanshasiya.com, right? Great website full of great material, but also subscribe, please, and that way you can get notifications from all the great stuff that we give. So go to that website, fhc.com, and please subscribe. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful Shabbos.